there, my name is Kelly Dale with Off the Beaded Path. I have a studio location in Forest City, North Carolina. I have a website called offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com, and I've been here on YouTube for about the last 10 or 11 years. So today I'm going to be working on another pattern that I released that last week of July for International Beading Week. This one is going to be for a fun pin wrap. I know a lot of you know how to make these, but a lot of people still do not understand or know how to make them. So that's what I'm going to show you today. So the first thing you're going to need is you are going to need a G2 gel pen. This pattern was made specifically for one of these G2 pens. All right, so what'll happen is we are going to be making a flat piece of peyote that is going to turn into a wrap that will go onto the pen. The great thing about the wraps is when your pen runs out of ink, all you have to do is slide the tube off, and then once you get a new pen, slide the beadwork back onto the tube and just put it back together and you have a new pen. Okay, so really, really great thing about these. Now you're also going to need to go to my website, offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com, and grab the free pattern. This one says Hot Mess because if you've been around my channel anytime, you know that hot mess is my word. So there's two versions of this pattern. There's the version here with the little flowers, and then if you go a couple of pages into the pattern, there is a second version, which is just a 2-color version, which is the one here that I had showed you. So you are going to need to grab that pattern and grab the color of Delicas that you want to use. Now this one here uses 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 colors of Delicas. The other one only uses 2. So you're going to need some Delicas. You're going to need a size 12 beading needle. You're going to need your favorite thread, and then like I said, one of those G2 gel pens that you can pretty much find at any store now or online. So let's go ahead and get started. Once you've got your pattern, then you're ready to gather up your beads. So the beads that I'm going to use in today's video are the exact beads that I used on the pattern. So just so you'll know, if you're not familiar with how to read the patterns, in both your bead chart and your word chart, you've got your A, B, C, D, E, F, and so forth. The number under it is the Delica number for the letter that you're going to use. The words under it are the software's name for the color. Do not go by this name because every software goes by a different name, but as long as you've got that number, you're set and good to go. The count means that, like this A, I'm going to use 164 of those beads. The B's, I'm going to use 704. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got my beads set up. I'm using the Bead Easy system by Beads Gone Wild. I'll post a link to it below in the description box. But you're going to go ahead and get your beads set out and ready to go. Now, as I was saying, you have 2 versions of the pattern you can go by. You can go by the bead chart, or you can go by the word chart. I personally like to go by the word chart. It makes life just seem a little bit easier. All right, so just so you kind of have an idea of where you're going to be starting, rows 1 and 2 here say that I'm going to thread on 37 of my B beads, 3 of my A, 3 of my B, and 3 of my A. So what this means is for my first row, it is starting here at the top of the pen wrap, and it is adding beads all the way across this top row, so that then I'll be working on my second row back. So that'll kind of give you an idea if you are following this word chart or your bead chart to do your piece. I like to do with the word chart. It just makes life a little bit easier. So again, the number in parentheses is the amount of beads I'm going to pick up of the letter next to it. Now, once I do this first row, my second row, it does not mean that I'm going to pick up 9 B's at one time. It means in total, I'm going to pick up 9 B's as I work back to do my next row. Then 1A, and again, I'm not going to add 13B at one time. Those are going to be 13 individual beads. So like right here, it would mean that I would pick up 13 individual of the beads as I go along. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my first row of beads added and we'll get started. As I was picking up the beads for that first row, it hit me that a minute ago, I referenced this as row 2. Now, I know that some people are going to be confused who have never followed a word chart before when you see here for this one, it says rows 1 and 2. And the reason it says 1 and 2 because you are going to be using these beads to build the first 2 rows. You're going to pick up all those beads exactly like it tells you to here. So I have picked up my 37B, my 3A, my 3B, and my 3A, just like it told me to do here for rows 1 and 2. So now for row 3, if you want, you can go ahead and lay your beads out on the mat. It's completely up to you. I would just rather pick them up as I go on the pattern. But if you want to, you can definitely lay them out. Just remember that whatever way you lay them out, make sure you pick them up in the way you laid them out. Meaning if I laid down 9A here, 1A here, and 13 B's here, I have to remember to start picking them up at the beginning of the row over here on the 9A. So you can see there that it tells me 9 of my A's. So let me actually pour a few out here. So I have my first and second row of beads laid onto the thread. I did not put a stop bead on. I used one of these little bougie bead stoppers from the Bead Along company. You can use a stop bead, whatever you want. But the first bead I'm going to pick up is an A. No, I'm sorry, a B. So it tells me I'm going to put on 9 of the B's. So I'm going to let these beads drop down just like this. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit for you so there we go. So I pick up the B. I skip the very last bead that I threaded on, which is an A here, and I come through the next bead. So I'm just going through picking up one, skipping one, and going through one. So I'm going to just put my fingers on that and pull. Now, if your 2 beads do not sit like you want them to, you may have to take and grab them like that and make them lay like they're supposed to. So because I just picked up a B, I know that that B needs to be on top. Now, it may flip back and forth, and that's okay. Just make sure that they're in the correct position when you come back for the next row. So it tells me I'm going to pick up 9 of these. So that's the first one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I'm just going to set those over here. So I pick up 1. I'm coming out of this bead. I skip this bead, and then I come through the next bead. Put my finger on it and pull it through. Putting your finger on it is just going to help to hold those beads in place and to hold the tension that you need. Pick up a bead. I'm coming out of this bead. I'm going to skip this bead and come through the next bead. So pick up 1, skip 1, and go through 1. Pick up 1, skip 1, go through 1. And I'm going to continue to work down the row until I have picked up all of my beads, and I pick up a bead, I skip a bead, and I go through a bead, just like that. So that as you work, I call it you're building a house brick by brick, and you can see there how those bricks are starting to lay, and that's exactly what you want as you work up to the end of the row. See that my row is complete. I've gone all the way to the end, and so now I can take and I can check off those first 2 rows. So now rows 1 and 2, I should say, and row 3. So for row 4, you'll notice here it says they have an L and an R. This just means I'm going to add the beads going to the left, and I'm going to come back to the right. So now I'm going to be working back the other way. So it's just back and forth, back and forth. Don't let this trip you up here on this pattern. Okay, row 4 is 19B, 1A, 2B, and 1A. So when you start the next row, I'm going to be working in the opposite direction. So this side was row 1 and 2. I worked this way to do row 3. So row 4 is going to be working back in the other direction. And the hardest part is done. Once you get this done, the hardest part is done. That first row is the hardest. So now I'm going to simply pick up one bead, and I'm going to go ahead and take my little bougie bead stopper off, because now I am going to work in the opposite direction. So the great thing about this, when I pick up the bead, I'm just going to pick it up and I'm going to go through the bead that is sticking up. So this will be the last bead that I added on the row. So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to pinch it here with my thumb and my pointer finger and pull it through. And so now you see that it will pop right into place. So I pick up another bead. I take the needle and I come through the next bead sticking up, just like this. And the great thing is, on this row, I'm gonna work the whole way down, just simply picking up one bead and going through the next bead. Just like this. So when you get down here, closer to where you have your pattern, you actually have beads already in place, make sure that the beads are laying in the correct place, meaning make sure that the beads here aren't twisted around like this. You want to make sure, because we threaded those on in row 1 and 2, that they're on this end side here. Same thing with this one little A that's right here. Make sure it's to the inside here and not to the outside. So you want to make sure that you don't get any of the beadwork flipped, and that it stays straight as you work all the way down to the end of the row. Once you complete that row, this is what your piece should look like, and you're ready to go on to row 5. And you're just going to work a back and forth pattern, picking up your rows until you finish row 42 on your pattern. And when you finish it, you are going to have a strip that looks like this. All right, so let me go ahead and get needles onto the ends of these strips, and I'll show you how we're going to put it on our ink pen. So the first thing I'm going to do to complete my pen wrap is I'm going to thread my needle onto the short tail thread here where I started, and I'm going to stitch through several beads to get rid of this thread. Now, people always ask me, what do you mean stitch through? You are going to stitch through, pass through, whatever you want to say, through several beads. The point is to, number one, use up some of the thread and hide it into your beadwork. But number 2 is you're going to lock this thread into place so it will not come out. You don't want to put knots in something like this, because anywhere you put a knot, you're going to be able to see it. So you'll notice here, I'm going to stitch up through a few beads, and I'm going in a direction that the thread will not be seen on the outside of a bead. So I'm going to go up through one more bead here, and then to kind of lock it into place, I'm going to come down through the bead right next to where my thread is coming out, and then I'm going to go up through that same bead I just came out of one more time, and that'll kind of lock that thread into place. Now I'll go through and I will stitch through a few beads here, and then I'll lock this thread into place down here. So I've already locked it in. This will be the 3rd place that I've done this and kind of locked this in. So I pretty well know that this is not going to come out. If you had any reservations about it, you could definitely go ahead and stitch through several more beads to get rid of your thread, but 3 locks is more than sufficient. So I'm going to stitch here to come out to the edge, and you can use your thread burner, you can use your scissors, you can kind of do whatever you want to, but I'm going to go in and get that cut just like that so that that thread is taken care of. Now comes the fun part where we actually get to put it on the pen wrap, or on the pen. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle here. There we go. Okay, so the pens that I used are called a G2 pen, and it's by Pilot. All right, you can find these in black and blue. They all have the little same size barrel, It's just a standard pin. You can get these at any store, just about it these days. They come in small packs, and this is a big pack because I like to make these pin wraps, so I buy the big packages of these to save on a little bit of money. So as I showed you in the intro video, this was the basic hot mess pin wrap, all right? And then this is the more floral one, and it's super easy to put this on. So I actually like to zip mine up on the pin itself. You don't have to do that, but I just like to do it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna slide the beadwork under the little piece here on the pin, the little clip part. And then I'm going to bring these together just like this, right? So that the beadwork is going to look just like this. So now what I'm going to do, and I'll kind of zoom in a little bit here for you. My thread is coming out here on this left side at the bottom. So I'm going to take, and on the right side, I'm going to go up through the first bead that's sticking up on this right side. Then I'm going to come over to the left, and I'm going to go through the next bead sticking up here on the left, and I'm going to pull. Go to the bead sticking up on the right, go through and pull. And what I do, I put my thumb, or not my thumb, but my pinky here up against the bottom of the pin, so that way as I work, I don't have to worry about the thread wrapping around the bottom of the pin and getting caught or anything like that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in a back and forth motion of going from right to left, and I'm only going through the bead that is sticking up, so that as I do that and I pull tight, you see that it starts to form a zip, so that way you can't tell where my little piece will begin and where it ended. And that's the whole point of doing these little wraps, so it looks like a continuous piece. So as you can see, I'm just going through. Another thing is, as you go through, make sure to pull the thread straight up or straight down, whichever direction you're working, instead of pulling back to the side or down like this, because when you do that, all you do is loosen it up. So I'm always pulling it straight the way that it's coming out of the bead. So I'm going to continue to work until I get this one zipped up. So once you get it zipped up, you can't tell where it started and where it ended, and that's my favorite part. So I'm coming out here at the end, and again, when I finish these off, I'm not going to make a knot anywhere. I'm going to stitch through the beads, and I'm going to lock the thread in place, and that's exactly what you want to do. All right, you may want to use a little bit more thread to lock this one in place than you did that little tail thread. So all I'm going to do is just real carefully, especially if you're using matte finish beads. Matte finish beads have a thinner wall to them and they can bust easier. So you want to be a little more careful, but you're going to go through and just lock your thread into place several places in the beadwork, just like I showed you earlier. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to lock the thread into place and get rid of the excess thread. Once you finish with the zip up and you get rid of your thread, then you are now ready to either use your new fabulous pin or give your pin as a gift. So guys, I hope you enjoyed learning how to make these fun new pin wraps. Again, the pins are just basic G2 gel pins that you can get at almost any store. And if you can't get out, Amazon carries them, Walmart.com carries them. Lots of people carry them, a basic pin, all right? The pattern is completely for free on my website, Off the Beaded Path, beadstore.com. And if you make one and you're on Facebook, I would love to see pictures on our Off the Beaded Path Facebook page, or if you're in our Off the Beaded Path group, I would love, love, love to see what colors you chose to use for your hot mess pins. And I would love to see who you give these to. So I hope you enjoyed this project. Again, make sure to go and grab your free pattern pattern off the beadedpathbeadstore.com, and you guys have fun with it, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.